Sergeant Major Elaine Laney Walker, retired, stood at her post inside the Pentagon's river entrance, wearing the standard uniform of a security guard, dark pants, light blue shirt, and a badge that read Pentagon Security Services. She was 62 years old, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, a face weathered by sun and hardship, and eyes that missed nothing. To the thousands of people who passed through her checkpoint daily, she was just another low-level security guard. Someone to hand their ID to, someone to nod at politely, someone to forget the moment they walked past. They had no idea who she really was. "Ma'am, ID please," Laney said to a young lieutenant rushing through the entrance, talking on her phone. The lieutenant barely glanced at her, slapping her common access card on the counter without interrupting her conversation. "Yeah, I'm almost there." "Hold on, some security guard wants my ID." Laney scanned the card, checked the photo against the lieutenant's face, and handed it back. "Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day." The lieutenant was already gone, still on her phone, not acknowledging the courtesy. It happened all day, every day. Officers, enlisted personnel, civilians, contractors, all streaming past Laney's checkpoint, all treating her as furniture, a necessary inconvenience between the parking lot and their important meetings. "Hey, Grandma, can you move faster?" A young captain in his late 20s tapped his ID impatiently on the counter. "Some of us have actual work to do." Laney looked at him calmly. "I'm moving as fast as security protocols allow, sir." Well, maybe if they hired people who weren't ancient, the line would move quicker. No offense. "None taken, sir." Laney scanned his ID. "You're all set." As he walked away, she heard him mutter to his colleague, "I swear, they just hire these old folks because they feel sorry for them, put them in jobs where they can't screw anything up too badly." Laney had been hearing comments like that for 3 years, ever since she'd taken this job after her real retirement from the Army. At 59, after 40 years of service, she'd finally hung up her uniform for good, or so she'd thought. But retirement hadn't suited her. The silence of her empty house, empty since her husband had died 5 years earlier, was deafening. Her daughter lived across the country with her own family. The garden and book clubs and volunteer work that other retirees enjoyed felt hollow. She'd been a soldier since she was 18. Being a soldier was who she was. So when a friend mentioned that the Pentagon was hiring retired military for security positions, Laney had applied. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept her connected to the military world. It gave her purpose, structure, routine. It also gave her a front row seat to how quickly the military forgot its own. Next, Laney called to the line that had formed during the morning rush. A colonel approached, accompanied by 2 civilians in expensive suits. Government contractors, probably here to pitch some new weapons system or technology. "Morning, Colonel," Laney said, taking his ID. He didn't respond, just handed over his card while continuing his conversation with the contractors. "As I was saying, the budget for this fiscal year is tight, but if your system performs as advertised, we can find the funding." Laney processed his ID, and the guest passes for the contractors efficiently, but the colonel didn't even look at her when he took them back. To him, she was invisible. This was her life now. 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, checking IDs and being invisible. At lunch, Laney sat in the break room with the other security guards. Most were retired military like her, enlisted folks who'd served 20 or 30 years and needed to supplement their pensions. "You see that full bird this morning?" asked Marcus, a retired Army sergeant who worked the mall entrance. "Dude literally threw his ID at me, like I'm a dog who's supposed to fetch." "They don't see us," said Patricia, a retired Air Force Master Sergeant. "To them, we're just part of the building, like the lights or the carpet." "Can you blame them?" Marcus said. "Look at us, we're old, we're doing entry-level work. Why would they think we're anything special?" "Because we served," Laney said quietly. "Same as them, we wore the uniform, we deployed, we sacrificed. That should count for something." "Should," Patricia agreed, "but doesn't." Laney's phone buzzed, a text from her daughter, Rachel. "Mom, I'm worried about you. This job is beneath you. Come live with us in Seattle, please." Laney texted back, "I'm fine, sweetheart. I like the work. I like feeling useful." It wasn't entirely true. She didn't like being treated as invisible, but she liked having a mission, even if that mission was just checking IDs. And sometimes, just sometimes, she could actually help someone. Like last month, when she'd noticed a young private first class coming through security every morning with haunted eyes and fresh bruises barely hidden by his uniform. Laney had quietly pulled him aside one day. "Son, are you okay? Is someone hurting you?" The private had broken down, told her about the abuse from his squad leader, about his fear of retaliation if he reported it, about feeling trapped. Laney had made calls, used connections from her 40 years of service. Within a week, the squad leader was under investigation and the private was transferred to a new unit. The private had come back to thank her, tears in his eyes. "You saved my life, ma'am. I was going to. I didn't see another way out." "You always have another way," Laney had told him. "And you're never alone. We take care of our own." Those moments made the invisible days bearable. Laney's shift was ending when she heard a commotion at the entrance. A group of officers had gathered, all looking at their phones, talking urgently. "Did you hear? General Martinez is coming through in about 10 minutes. The General Martinez, chairwoman of the Joint Chiefs. "Yeah, some kind of surprise visit to SECDEF. Huge security detail." Laney felt her pulse quicken. General Elena Martinez, the first female chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, appointed just 6 months ago after a distinguished career that included combat commands in Iraq and Afghanistan. Laney knew General Martinez. Or rather, she'd known her when she was Captain Martinez, 30 years ago in the desert of Iraq during the First Gulf War. But Martinez wouldn't remember her. It had been 3 decades, and Laney had been one of thousands of sergeants the then captain had served with. The security supervisor rushed over. "Okay, people, listen up. We've got a 4-star coming through. I want everyone on their best behavior. That means professional, efficient, no screw-ups. Especially you older folks. Stay sharp, stay focused." "We've been doing this job for years," Patricia muttered. "Pretty sure we can handle checking an ID." 10 minutes later, the motorcade arrived. Black SUVs pulled up to the entrance, and security personnel in suits and earpieces took positions around the area. Then General Martinez stepped out. She was in her late 50s now, wearing her service uniform with 4 stars on each shoulder. Her bearing was command itself, confident, alert, powerful. She'd come a long way from the young Captain Laney had known. The general walked toward the entrance, surrounded by her security detail and several aides. The other security guards had stepped back, letting the VIP protection team handle the entry procedures. But Laney was still at her post. This was her checkpoint, her responsibility. As the general approached, Laney stood at attention, an old habit from 40 years of military service. General Martinez pulled out her ID and handed it to Laney. Their eyes met. For a moment, nothing happened. The general looked at her with the same polite disinterest everyone else showed. Then something changed in her expression. Recognition flickered across her face. "Sergeant Major Walker," Martinez said, her voice uncertain. "Laney Walker." Laney nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Good to see you, General." Martinez stared at her. "What are you doing working security? You're Sergeant Major Walker. You're a legend." The entire entrance area had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now. "I'm retired, ma'am," Laney said calmly. "This is my job now." "But Martinez looked around at the security booth, the ID scanner, the basic post. "This doesn't make sense." One of the young captains who'd been rude earlier spoke up. "Sir, is there a problem? This is just one of the security guards." General Martinez turned to him with an expression that could have melted steel. "This is not just a security guard, Captain. This is Sergeant Major Elaine Walker, and you will show her the respect she's earned." Then in front of everyone, the security detail, the aides, the gathering crowd of Pentagon personnel, General Elena Martinez, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, came to attention and rendered a sharp, crisp salute. To a woman in a security guard uniform. Laney, decades of military bearing taking over, returned the salute. The crowd stood in stunned silence. "Ma'am, you don't need to," Laney began. "Yes, I do," Martinez said firmly. "I absolutely do, because 30 years ago in Iraq you saved my life, and I've never forgotten." 30 years earlier, Iraq. Sergeant First Class Elaine Walker crouched in the ruins of a bombed-out building in southern Iraq, her rifle ready, watching the road for enemy movement. She was 32 years old, a combat medic with the 101st Airborne Division on her third deployment. The First Gulf War was winding down, but pockets of Iraqi resistance still fought. And some of the most dangerous work came in the chaotic days after major combat operations ended, searching buildings, securing areas, dealing with bypassed enemy units. "Walker, you see anything?" Captain Alina Martinez asked over the radio. She was the company commander, young and capable, leading her unit through this final push. "Negative, ma'am, road's clear." "Copy, we're moving up." The company was advancing through a small town that intelligence said had been abandoned. But Laney had learned not to trust intelligence completely. You trusted your eyes, your instincts, your training. And right now, her instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The buildings were too quiet. No civilians, no animals, no movement at all. In her experience, that either meant everyone had truly fled, or they were waiting. "Ma'am, hold position," Laney said into her radio. "Something's not right." "Walker, we're on a schedule. HQ wants this town secured by 1500. "With respect, ma'am, I've got a bad feeling. Give me 5 minutes to scout ahead." Captain Martinez paused, then replied, "You've got 3 minutes, make them count." Laney moved through the ruins like a ghost, using cover, staying low, watching for tripwires, booby traps, ambush positions. She'd been a soldier for 14 years at this point, and she developed a sixth sense for danger. She found it in the third building she checked. An Iraqi army uniform, recently discarded, empty ammunition boxes, signs of recent occupation, and in the corner, barely visible, a wire leading into the debris. An IED, a big one from the size of the wire. Laney traced the wire carefully, following it through the rubble. It led to the main road, right where Captain Martinez was about to lead the company. She keyed her radio. "Ma'am, stop. IED on the main road, large one, don't move the company forward." "Are you sure?" "Positive. I'm looking at the trigger wire right now." Laney heard Martinez halt the company's advance, heard her calling for the EOD team. But EOD was 30 minutes away, and they didn't have 30 minutes. The Iraqi fighters who'd planted this bomb were probably watching, and if they realized the Americans had discovered it, they might detonate it early or ambush the stopped column. Laney studied the wire, following it to where it disappeared into the ground. She'd had basic EOD training as a combat medic, enough to stabilize situations, not enough to be certified. But she knew enough to see that this was a command-detonated device, meaning someone was watching with a trigger. She also saw something else, a pressure plate hidden under debris on the road, a backup trigger in case the command wire failed. Captain Martinez was going to step right on it. Laney didn't think, she ran. She burst from the building and sprinted toward the captain, who was standing near the pressure plate, talking on her radio, completely unaware of the death beneath her feet. "Don't move," Laney screamed. Martinez froze. Laney covered the last 20 yards and dove, hitting the captain in a flying tackle that sent them both sprawling off the road. The pressure plate, disturbed by the vibration, triggered. The explosion was massive. The IED had been packed with artillery shells, military-grade explosives, and shrapnel. It cratered the road where Martinez had been standing seconds earlier. If Laney had been 3 seconds slower, the captain would have been vaporized. As the dust settled, Laney found herself lying on top of Martinez, both of them covered in dirt and debris but alive. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Laney asked. Martinez was shaking. "You just saved my life." "That's my job, ma'am." But it was more than that. Over the next hour, as EOD cleared the area, they discovered a network of IEDs and an ambush position. The entire company had been about to walk into a trap that would have killed dozens of soldiers. Laney's instincts, her caution, her willingness to trust her gut, it had saved them all. Captain Martinez put her in for a Bronze Star with valor. At the award ceremony 2 months later, Martinez had said, "Sergeant Walker represents the very best of the NCO Corps. She's the backbone of this army, and I'm honored to serve alongside her." They'd kept in touch for a few years after that. Christmas cards, occasional emails. But then life intervened, different assignments, different time zones, the grinding pace of military life. They'd lost contact. Martinez had risen through the ranks, becoming a general, eventually the first female chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Laney had stayed enlisted, rising to sergeant major, serving in combat in Iraq and Afghanistan during the later wars, training thousands of soldiers, doing the quiet, essential work that kept the army functioning. And now, 30 years after that day in the Iraqi desert, they were meeting again. One a four-star general, the other a security guard. The Pentagon entrance was still frozen in silence as General Martinez and Laney stood facing each other, having just exchanged salutes. "Ma'am, you're blocking the entrance," one of Martinez's aides said nervously. "You're meeting with the secretary." "Can wait," Martinez said firmly. She turned to her security detail. "Give me a few minutes. Sergeant Major Walker and I need to talk." She gestured to a quiet corner of the security area. Laney followed, acutely aware that every eye in the building was on them. "Laney, what the hell are you doing working as a security guard?" Martinez asked when they had privacy. "You're Sergeant Major Elaine Walker. You retired as the command Sergeant Major of the 101st Airborne. You have 40 years of service. You should be teaching at the War College, consulting for defense companies, working at the highest levels." "I applied for those jobs, ma'am," Laney said quietly. "All of them. Nobody was interested in a 60-year-old woman, even one with my background." Martinez looked stricken. "That's impossible, your record." "My record is exemplary, but age discrimination is real, ma'am, and it's worse for women. Companies see female 62 on an application and they file it in the trash. They want young, they want male, they want someone who fits their image of what a military expert looks like." "This is unacceptable." Laney smiled slightly. "With respect, ma'am, it's reality. I tried for a year to find meaningful work, applied to over 100 positions, got maybe 5 interviews, no offers. Eventually, I needed to eat and pay rent, so I took this job." "But you're one of the most experienced combat NCOs in the Army. You've trained thousands of soldiers. You've served in every major conflict for 4 decades. That expertise is being wasted." "I know, ma'am." Martinez was packing now, angry. "Did you try to contact me? I could have helped." "I didn't want charity, ma'am. I wanted to be hired on my merits. And honestly, I didn't think you'd remember me. It was 30 years ago. You've served with thousands of soldiers since then." "I've never forgotten the woman who saved my life," Martinez said. "And I've never forgotten the lessons you taught me about leadership, about trusting NCOs, about listening to instinct, about the value of experience." She pulled out her phone. "This is being fixed right now." "Ma'am, you don't need to." "Yes, I do. This is about more than just you, Laney. It's about how we're treating our senior enlisted veterans. If someone with your qualifications is working security because nobody will hire them, then we have a systemic failure." Over the next 10 minutes, Laney watched as General Martinez made calls to the Secretary of Defense, to the heads of major defense contractors, to the Commandant of the National Defense University. Finally, Martinez hung up and turned to Laney. "You have 3 job offers coming, one from the War College to develop their senior NCO leadership program, one from Raytheon as a senior consultant on soldier systems and training, and one from the Joint Chiefs Staff as an advisor on enlisted personnel issues." "Ma'am, I can't just—" "Yes, you can. These are positions you're qualified for, positions you should have been offered years ago. You're not taking charity, you're taking what you earned." Laney felt tears threatening. She'd spent 3 years invisible, treated like she was worthless, and now, in 10 minutes, everything had changed. "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me. Thank yourself for being too stubborn to give up, for serving 40 years with distinction, for saving my life so I could be here today to return the favor." The young captain who'd made the rude comment earlier approached hesitantly. "Sir, I mean, ma'am, General Martinez, I owe the sergeant major an apology. I didn't know, I just assumed she was. I thought." "You thought she was just an old woman working a job anyone could do," Martinez said coldly. "You made assumptions based on her age and her position without bothering to learn who she actually was. That's a failure of leadership, Captain." "Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, Sergeant Major." Laney looked at him. He was young, probably 28 or 29, probably a good officer who just made a thoughtless mistake. "Apology accepted, Captain, but let me give you some advice. Never assume you're the smartest person in the room, and never underestimate someone based on their age or their current position. Some of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met were janitors, cooks, and security guards, people doing humble jobs but carrying lifetimes of experience. I'll remember that, ma'am. As word spread through the Pentagon, people started approaching Laney. Officers who'd walked past her checkpoint for years without a second glance. Civilians who'd treated her as invisible. Now they wanted to shake her hand, to thank her for her service, to apologize for not recognizing her. It was overwhelming and vindicating and bittersweet all at once. Patricia, her fellow security guard, pulled her aside. "Girl, what just happened? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs saluted you." "Long story," Laney said, "but the short version is I saved her life 30 years ago." "And she never forgot." "Apparently not." Marcus joined them. "Does this mean you're leaving us, getting some fancy job?" "I don't know, maybe, probably." Laney looked at her fellow guards, all retired military, all veterans, all doing honest work but being treated as invisible. "But if I do take one of those positions, I'm going to make sure people remember that experience matters, that our senior veterans have value, that just because someone's older doesn't mean they're obsolete." "You do that," Patricia said, "for all of us." General Martinez finally had to leave for her meeting with the Secretary of Defense. But before she went, she stopped by Laney's checkpoint one more time. "I meant what I said about those job offers, but I also wanted to ask you something. There's a congressional hearing next month on military retention and veteran employment. Would you be willing to testify, to tell your story?" "What story is that, ma'am?" "The story of an exceptional soldier who retired and then discovered that all her experience and expertise meant nothing in the civilian world because of her age and gender. The story of how we're failing our veterans, especially our women veterans, especially our older veterans. The story that needs to be told." Laney thought about it, thought about the other security guards who'd served their country and were now treated as invisible, thought about the countless older veterans who couldn't find meaningful work, thought about the waste of expertise and knowledge. "Yes, ma'am, I'll testify." "Good, because if we don't fix this, if we keep treating our senior veterans like they're disposable, we're going to lose a generation of knowledge and experience that we can never get back." Martinez extended her hand. Laney shook it. "It's good to see you again, Laney, and I promise you this is just the beginning. Things are going to change." As the general left, surrounded by her security detail and aides, Laney returned to her checkpoint. She had 3 more hours on her shift. But for the first time in 3 years, she felt seen. Valued. Remembered. The congressional hearing was held on a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks after the encounter at the Pentagon. Laney sat at the witness table wearing her best suit, her service ribbons displayed on her lapel, her hands folded calmly despite the nervousness churning inside. The hearing room was packed. Media had picked up the story. 4-star general salutes security guard, and it had gone viral. The image of General Martinez rendering honors to a woman in a security uniform had struck a chord with millions of veterans who felt forgotten. Senator Patricia Williams, chair of the Armed Services Committee, called the hearing to order. "We're here today to examine the employment challenges facing retired senior enlisted personnel, particularly those over age 55. Our first witness is Command Sergeant Major Elaine Walker, U.S. Army, retired, who spent 40 years in uniform and the last 3 years working as a security guard at the Pentagon. Sergeant Major Walker, please proceed." Laney took a sip of water and began. "Senators, thank you for inviting me to speak. I served in the United States Army for 40 years. I deployed to Desert Storm, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, and several classified locations. I trained over 5,000 soldiers. I rose to the rank of Command Sergeant Major of the 101st Airborne Division. I was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, a Purple Heart, and numerous other decorations." She paused. "When I retired at age 59, I assumed my experience would be valued in the civilian workforce. I was wrong." For the next 15 minutes, Laney walked them through her job search, the hundreds of applications, the rejection emails that politely said she wasn't a good fit, the interviews where she could see the moment they decided she was too old, the age discrimination that was illegal but impossible to prove. "Finally, I took a job as a security guard at the Pentagon. It paid $13 an hour, about a tenth of what I'd been offered for positions that went to younger, less experienced male veterans. I accepted it because I needed to eat and pay rent, but also because I couldn't stand being idle. I'm a soldier, Service is who I am. One senator spoke up. Sergeant Major, with your level of experience, why didn't you reach out to senior leaders you'd served with? Surely someone could have helped you. With respect, sir, I didn't want special favors. I wanted to be hired on merit. I wanted companies to look at my qualifications and see value. The fact that they didn't, the fact that my age and gender made me invisible, that's the problem we need to fix. Another senator asked, are you saying there's systemic age discrimination against military veterans? I'm saying there's systemic age discrimination, period, but it's particularly bad for veterans over 55 and it's worse for women. We're seen as obsolete, as unable to adapt, as not worth the investment. The reality is that senior veterans bring institutional knowledge, leadership experience, and problem-solving skills that can't be taught in any MBA program. But companies don't see that. They see our age and move on to the next resume. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Other witnesses testified, HR professionals from major defense contractors, veterans employment advocates, senior military leaders including General Martinez. Martinez was powerful in her testimony. The military spends decades training senior NCOs to be leaders, strategists, and experts in their fields. Then at retirement, we throw them into a civilian job market that doesn't value experience. That's not just wrong, it's a waste of national resources. Sergeant Major Walker has more leadership and strategic expertise than most corporate executives, but she was offered a security guard position. That should outrage every American. The media coverage was extensive. News segments interviewed other senior veterans who'd faced similar discrimination. Advocacy groups rallied support. Social media exploded with stories of older workers being passed over for younger candidates. Within a month, 3 major developments occurred. First, a coalition of defense contractors announced a new initiative specifically targeting retired senior enlisted personnel for leadership and consulting positions. They committed to interviewing at least one veteran over age 55 for every senior position they filled. Second, the Department of Labor launched an investigation into age discrimination in veteran hearing practices. Third, Laney was offered, and accepted, the position at the National Defense University, developing leadership curriculum for senior enlisted personnel. 6 months after the hearing, Laney stood in front of a classroom at the National Defense University in Washington, D.C. Her students were senior NCOs from all branches of service, preparing for battalion and brigade command sergeant major positions. Leadership, she told them, isn't about rank or authority. It's about influence, expertise, and the respect you earn through service. Some of you will retire from the military in 10 or 20 years, and when you do, the civilian world may not immediately recognize your value. They may see your age instead of your experience. They may underestimate you. She smiled. When that happens, remember that your worth isn't defined by others' perceptions. It's defined by what you've done, what you know, and what you can still contribute. Don't let anyone make you feel invisible. Don't let anyone tell you that you're too old, too obsolete, too anything to keep serving. After class, a senior master sergeant from the Air Force approached her. Ma'am, I wanted to thank you for what you did, for speaking out. My father is a retired Army sergeant major. He's been applying for jobs for 2 years with no luck. After your testimony, he was contacted by 3 companies. He starts a new job next week as a logistics consultant. That's wonderful. It's because of you. You gave a voice to people who felt forgotten. That became Laney's new mission. Teaching at the university, yes, but also advocating for senior veterans. She consulted with companies on how to recognize and value the expertise of older workers. She mentored retiring NCOs, helping them translate their military experience into civilian terms. She spoke at conferences and wrote articles about the value of experience in an age-obsessed culture. And she stayed in touch with the security guards at the Pentagon. Patricia, Marcus, and the others. They were her friends, her peers, her brothers and sisters in service. Several of them, inspired by Laney's example, went back to school or applied for better positions. The visibility Laney had brought to their situation had opened doors. 1 year after the congressional hearing, General Martinez invited Laney to lunch at a restaurant in Georgetown. I wanted to update you on something, Martinez said. The initiative that started with your testimony has grown. We now have over 40 major companies committed to actively recruiting senior veterans. Veteran unemployment for workers over 55 has dropped by 12%, and the Department of Defense has created a new transition program specifically for senior enlisted personnel. That's incredible. It's a start, but there's more work to do. Martinez leaned forward. Laney, I'm asking you to consider something. The Sergeant Major of the Army is retiring next year. I want you to come back to active duty and take that position. Laney nearly dropped her water glass. Ma'am, I'm 63 years old. I've been retired for 4 years. That's not possible. I've already spoken to the Secretary of the Army. We can bring you back under a special appointment. The Sergeant Major of the Army needs to be someone who understands the challenges facing enlisted personnel, particularly those approaching retirement. Who better than you? Ma'am, there are dozens of qualified sergeant majors who are all younger and currently serving, yes, but none of them have your unique perspective. None of them have lived through what you've lived through. None of them can speak to the entire enlisted force, from the newest private to the most senior NCO preparing for retirement, with the same credibility you have. Laney thought about it, thought about the mission, the impact, the opportunity to serve again. But she also thought about the work she was doing now. The teaching, the advocacy, the mentoring, that work mattered too. I'm honored, ma'am, but I need to respectfully decline. I'm doing important work here. Work that helps the very population the Sergeant Major of the Army would need to advocate for. I can be more effective from outside the system than inside it. Martinez nodded slowly. I understand, and you're probably right, but the offer stands if you change your mind. Thank you, ma'am. They talked for another hour, reminiscing about their time in Iraq, discussing the current state of the military, sharing concerns and hopes for the future. As lunch ended, Martinez said, You know, when I saluted you at the Pentagon, people thought I was honoring your past service. And I was. But I was also honoring what you've done since retirement. You took an impossible situation, being invisible, undervalued, dismissed, and you turned it into a platform for change. That takes a different kind of courage than combat. I just told the truth, ma'am. And the truth changed everything. That's power, Laney. That's leadership. That's why you're still serving, even though you took off the uniform. 5 years after that day at the Pentagon security checkpoint, Laney celebrated her 67th birthday at her daughter's house in Seattle. She'd taken a sabbatical from teaching to spend time with her grandchildren, 3 of them now, ranging from age 3 to 9. Grandma, 9-year-old Michael asked over birthday cake, Is it true you used to be a security guard? Yes, sweetheart, for 3 years. But you were also a super important soldier, right? So why did you work as a security guard? Rachel, Laney's daughter, started to intervene, but Laney held up a hand. Because sometimes, Michael, the world doesn't see us the way we really are. Sometimes people make assumptions about us, because we're older, or because we're women, or because of the job we're doing. They think they know everything about us when they actually know nothing. That's not fair. No, it's not, but it's reality. The question is, what do you do when people underestimate you? Do you give up? Do you accept their judgment? What did you do? I kept serving, I kept being who I was even when nobody noticed. And eventually someone did notice. Someone recognized me, and that moment changed everything. Michael thought about it. So you're saying I should always be my best, even when people don't notice? Exactly, because you never know when someone important will notice. And even if they don't, you'll know. And that's what matters most. After the party, Rachel walked Laney to her car. Mom, you seem happy, genuinely happy, more than you've been since Dad died. I am happy. I have purpose again. I'm teaching, mentoring, making a difference. And I'm doing it on my own terms, not because someone in authority gave me permission, but because I refuse to stay invisible. I'm proud of you for fighting back, for speaking up. I'm proud of me too, Laney said, and she meant it. 10 years after the security checkpoint encounter, Laney was invited to speak at the Pentagon's annual Women's History Month event. She was 72 now, officially retired from teaching, but still active as a consultant and mentor. The event was held in the same corridor where she'd once worked security. She could see her old checkpoint, now staffed by a younger veteran who'd taken her place. General Martinez, still chairman of the Joint Chiefs, introduced her. 10 years ago, I walked into this building and almost walked right past an old friend. She was working security, and I'd been so focused on my important meeting that I barely glanced at her. But then I recognized her. recognized the woman who'd saved my life 30 years earlier, recognized one of the finest soldiers I'd ever served with. That moment taught me something crucial, that we're surrounded by heroes every day, but we don't see them because we're not paying attention. Because we've made assumptions about who matters and who doesn't based on their current position, their age, their gender. Sergeant Major Elaine Walker forced us all to pay attention, to see the invisible people around us, to recognize that experience and expertise don't have expiration dates, and in doing so, she changed how this nation treats its senior veterans. Laney took the podium to applause. Thank you, General. 10 years ago, I was invisible. Today, I'm speaking to you from a position of respect and recognition. But I want you to know something important. I'm the same person I was then. Same knowledge, same experience, same dedication to service. The only thing that changed was visibility. How many other people are invisible right now? How many veterans, how many older workers, how many talented individuals are being overlooked because they don't fit someone's preconceived notion of what valuable looks like? My challenge to you is this: see people. Really see them. Look past the uniform or lack thereof. Look past the job title. Look past the age and gender and all the other superficial markers we use to categorize each other. See the human being and their experience and expertise. Because the person checking your ID at the gate might be a Medal of Honor recipient. The janitor might have a PhD. The security guard might be the person who once saved a general's life. We're all more than what we appear to be, and we all deserve to be seen. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, a young female lieutenant approached Laney nervously. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you. I'm planning to make the Army my career, but I worry about what happens after retirement. Your story gives me hope that there's life and purpose after the uniform." "There is," Laney assured her. "It might not look like what you expect. It might involve being invisible for a while, but if you stay true to yourself, if you refuse to accept others' limitations, you'll find your way, and you'll be stronger for the struggle." As Laney left the Pentagon that day, she passed her old security checkpoint. The guard on duty, a retired Army Sergeant First Class, recognized her and came to attention. "Sergeant Major Walker, it's an honor, ma'am." Laney smiled. "What's your name, Sergeant?" "Martinez, Sergeant First Class Daniel Martinez, retired." "No relation to the general?" "No, ma'am, just coincidence." "Well, Sergeant Martinez, thank you for your service, both your military service and your service here. This job matters. The people in this building may not always notice you, but you're the first line of defense. You're the welcome committee. You're the face of the Pentagon. That's important work." "Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot." As Laney walked to her car, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From combat medic to command sergeant major to invisible security guard to respected teacher and advocate. The path had been unexpected, painful at times, frustrating and humiliating and difficult. But it had also been necessary. Because if she hadn't experienced being invisible, she wouldn't have understood the problem. If she hadn't struggled, she wouldn't have had the credibility to advocate for change. If General Martinez hadn't recognized her and saluted her, the moment that sparked national conversation about veteran employment would never have happened. They'd thought she was just security, until a general stood up and saluted. And in that moment, everything changed. Not just for Laney, but for thousands of senior veterans who'd been invisible, overlooked, underestimated. The salute heard round the military. The moment that proved experience never expires. The woman who refused to stay invisible. That was Sergeant Major Elaine Walker's legacy. And it would endure long after she was gone. Because she'd taught a generation that your value isn't determined by others' perceptions. It's determined by who you are, what you've done, and what you refuse to accept. She was never just security. She was a warrior, a leader, a hero, and nothing, not age, not dismissal, not invisibility, could ever change that. Service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. It just takes a different form. And sometimes that form is standing at a security checkpoint, checking IDs, and waiting for the moment when someone finally sees you. Really sees you. And salutes the warrior you've always been. Always will be. Forever.